Once the previous Rebbe was visiting a yeshiva, and the Chazan, he saw the previous Rebbe's in the yeshiva, so he skipped Anna. He says the previous Rebbe is here, we don't say Tachanun, the Rebbe is here. So after the prayer was over, the Rebbe went over to him and said, why did you skip the Tachanun? Why did you skip the Anna? Why did you skip the confessionary prayer? So he said, because the Rebbe is here. So the previous Rebbe said, the Rebbe being here is a reason not to make mistakes, not to do sins. It's not a reason not to skip. It's not a reason to skip Tachanun. Skipping Tachanun is not what's needed. We need to pray that Hashem, to pray for Hashem to have coming of Mashiach and the end of all the suffering. Okay. People always wonder about the afterlife. What does Judaism say about the afterlife? About where we go after Chas V'Shalom, someone passes away, where do they go? And the truth, and they wonder, does it really say in the Torah? Is it hinted in the Torah? The truth is that the Torah doesn't just talk about it in a hint. The Torah talks about it very explicitly. It's a very long section of Tanakh, where in the book of Samuel, where it talks about the afterlife and the connection between this world and the afterlife. There was time of King Shaul, King Saul. There were a large group of Philistines that were poised to attack Jewish people, and the Shaul wasn't really sure what to do. He had an army in Gilboa, and he wasn't sure if he should engage in battle with them. He shouldn't engage in battle with them. What should he do? Because it seemed that their army was overwhelming. So at that time, the normal thing to do would be to ask the Kohen Gadol. Go to the high priest. The high priest has an instant text messaging system with God. He has the Urim Tumim. He asks Hashem. He comes before Hashem. He asks a question, and all of a sudden the answer lights up on the stones on his breastplate. So the problem though was that Shaul didn't have that option, because the Kohanim in the city of Nov, together with the Kohen Gadol Achimelech, they all were supporters of King Saul's rival, King David. And therefore, Saul killed all the Kohanim in the city of Nov, and he killed the Kohen Gadol as well. So he couldn't really ask the Kohen Gadol any questions, because now it's hard for us. I'm not going to go into that question, how it's possible that Saul did it, but let's just say this, that whatever it sounds like isn't what it is. The Torah has layers and layers of meaning, and King Shaul was a perfect tzaddik. Where it says that he was when he was a king, he was 1 year old. And the Gemara explains that he was like a 1-year-old who never made a mistake. So how that fits in with a simple story, not the subject of today, but I get the question. I had the same question, but that's not for today. So he didn't know what to do. The other option of getting advice was to ask Shmuel HaNavi, Shmuel the prophet. Shmuel the prophet is a Navi, he's a prophet, he has access. He has Wi-Fi. So he could get the answer from Hashem. The problem is that he passed away already. So what's he going to do? So there is something discussed in 6 Torah portions, says you shouldn't do this, and that is to raise the dead, the form of idolatry and sorcery called Ov. And you can go to these sorcerers and they could raise the dead. They put a bone into their armpits, and they somehow conjure up spirits or people have passed away, and you can talk to them. So Shaul wanted to go to speak to someone who knows how to do this. That wasn't an option either. Why wasn't that an option? Because since the Torah says that they shouldn't do this, so therefore King Saul wiped out all of these people who did this witchcraft and idolatry from Israel. So there was no one to go to. So he couldn't go to the high priest, he killed him. He couldn't go to Shmuel, Samuel the prophet passed away also. He couldn't go to the people of Ov, he wiped them out of Israel. So he asked his servants to try to find, maybe they know of someone who could do this. Maybe there is someone who does Ov, and they didn't have a website, but they did have one person, one lady, actually, who lived in a city called Enedor, and she was able to do this stuff. Amen. So, She wasn't Jewish. She was a witch. And King Saul didn't want her to be frightened because he had, made this campaign to destroy all witches and stuff. So imagine, like, the guy who kills all the witches comes to your house and you're a witch. It's not like very, very friendly conversation. Hi, I'm the witch killer. Are you a witch? So he got dressed up in regular clothing, and he came to her home. He came with his trusted generals, and were perfect tzaddikim, Avner, Amasa, and he comes to her house, and she was very frightened. She didn't want to admit that she does this because she knew that this was like banned big time. But they begged her to please do this, and he wasn't wearing the royal robes. He was dressed like a regular person. She couldn't tell that he was the king, and she agrees. Finally, she agrees to do this. She puts this bone under her armpit. That's how you do it. Don't do this. Don't do this. It's a sin. But this is what she did. She put and she said, well, who do you want us to talk to? Who are we trying to get in touch with? He says, I want to speak to Shmuel HaNavi, Samuel the prophet. So she says, she's very frightened. She doesn't want to do this, but she does it anyways. They convince her. She does it. And as soon as she sees Shmuel HaNavi, she starts screaming, "You lied to me! You lied to me! You are King Shaul himself. You are the King Saul. What are you doing? You came to kill me. This was a ruse. This was a trick to get me." He says, whoa. How'd you know that I was King Shaul? First of all, tell me how you know. I'm not going to kill you, but tell me how you knew. So she says that usually when she conjures up a spirit from the other worlds, a person passed away from the other world, they don't come the way that he did. He came talking like a regular human being, dressed in regular clothing, standing upright. And he only would do that in honor of a king. That's what she said. And only in honor of a king would he appear the way he does, like a regular person with standing upright. So he asks. So Shmuel first of all begins the conversation, and he says, "Why did you disturb me?" Which is an interesting thing. Why did you disturb me? Like, you think, like, sometimes people try to honor people who pass away, and the way that they are actually disturbing them. Like, sometimes you're grieving too much. Chas v'shalom. When someone passes away, it's not an easy thing. But there's 7 days, there's 30 days, there's 11 months, and when you mourn too much, it actually disturbs the soul, disturbs the neshama. So Shmuel HaNavi, Samuel the prophet, says to King Shaul, he says to him, "Why did you disturb me?" So Shaul says, "I disturbed you because I really don't know what to do. We have the whole huge Philistine army. They're poised to attack us. They far outnumber us. I didn't know what to do. I don't have the opportunity to ask the Kohen Gadol." And so Shmuel actually said a line to Shaul, very painful line. He said, "God has left you. Why are you disturbing?" What he meant was, when Shmuel was alive, when Samuel the prophet was alive, he couldn't tell the whole truth to Shaul. The whole truth is too painful. What happened was that because King Saul had mercy on the Amalekites, that God said to wipe out all the Amalekites, and he didn't. So it says in the Torah that Shemuel told Saul that God has taken away the monarchy from you and has given it to... And Shmuel walked away from Saul, and Saul tried to grab him. Instead of grabbing him, he grabbed his cloak, and the cloak ripped. And Samuel the prophet, Shmuel, says, just like the cloak ripped, you should know that God has taken away the monarchy from you and has given it to someone better. He didn't say who the someone better was. So he says, I want to tell you, it's King David, your rival. He is one God has chosen, and God has left you. The Spirit of God. Shaul, by the way, Saul also was a prophet before, and this spirit of prophecy has been given to King David, and you lost it because of whatever. He told him the full truth. So
he didn't know it was David till that point,
right? He told him. Maybe he did. Maybe that's what bothered him. Well, I don't know. It's a deep question. It's a subject of Shaul Melech is a subject in itself, but he said it to him in more of a sharper way than he ever told him before. And Shaul says, "Listen, I don't know what to do. I had no choice." So Shmuel says that you and your son are going to die in battle against the Philistines, and they're going to be victorious. So Shaul asked, "Should I run away? Maybe I should run away." So Shmuel said, "If you fight in battle you will get to be with me in heaven in Gan Eden. But if you run away, you won't be able to have that merit. So Shaul fought the next day, and he and his son, Yonasan, Yonatan, were killed in that battle, Al Kiddush Hashem. That's what the Torah says. So the obvious question, based upon this Torah portion, is, one second, the only problem Shmuel had with him was, why are you disturbing me? What about the bigger problem? Why are you violating the laws of the Torah using the sorcerer? The sorcerer is a forbidden thing. So the answer is, the reason why it was okay, or at least Shaul thought it was okay, was because he thought our lives are in danger. We don't know what to do here. Since our lives are in danger, we're allowed to go and do anything, whether break any law of the Torah, except for the 3 cardinal sins, rather than, that's what Shaul thought. But actually it wasn't true. It wasn't true because you don't need, there's no gain to be had from engaging in idolatry, in sorcery, in horoscopes, in tarot cards, in crystal balls, in psychics, and soothsayers, and all of those other stuff. It's all a waste of time. They don't help you. One second. You have a question. I thought you knew what your question is. Your question is, there's an argument among Jewish halachic authorities. They argue about this. Maimonides says that, astrology is baloney. He says anyone who believes them are just foolish little kids. No one should believe in Rambam. Says astrology is baloney. He says these people look in the stars, don't know what they see things, they don't know what they're seeing. They mix up stuff. They see true stuff. They see false stuff. They don't know what they're seeing. There's another opinion, however. The other opinion says that they do see and they do know, and Hashem forbids us to do it anyways because it's not holy. It's impure. That's the argument. Is that your question?
Well, my question was, how would he have known that he had to go to battle and not run away? Because now, because he brought him back to the dead, he was able to go to sit with Shmuel.
Interesting. He did gain something. He knew what to do. He knew not to run away. Interesting.
But he wouldn't run away if he wouldn't have.
What would he have done if he went to Vest?
He wouldn't. But that's another prophet at the time.
There's no one else to ask. He would have asked another prophet, but the bottom line, which I wanted to say, was
that's why Shaul went to the.
He didn't. He went out to battle because Shmuel told him to go out to battle. You have to go out to battle, and that's why he died there. But unlike Lahav, the other religions, we don't believe that the end justifies the means. We don't believe that, like in Robin Hood. What's Robin Hood? Steal from the rich and give to the poor. We don't believe you do something bad that some good can happen. If Hashem says this isn't something that you need to do, they won't help to do it. So this is something which is not a holy thing. It's not something. It doesn't matter if you could somehow do it. It's not going to be beneficial because it's not something which Hashem tells us is a way to access information. That information you're going to access in a way that's not kosher is not going to help you. But I want to answer the bigger question. The bigger question is, so who's right? Is Maimonides right? Is the other opinion right? And so according to the other opinion, it would seem that we should go to these horoscopish Bava Mises. So basically, the Rebbe says like this: you cannot say that they're arguing in nuance. You cannot say that they're arguing and they have a mystical argument between them because they're arguing in Jewish law. They're arguing in halacha. Halacha is a very black and white. Although the Torah doesn't like to use terms which are impure, not holy, when the Torah talks about non-kosher things, the Torah says clear, not kosher. The Torah doesn't say the opposite of pure. When Noach was bringing the animals to his boat, the Torah says he brought the pure animals and the ones which were not pure, the opposite of pure. When the Torah talks about the laws of kosher, it says tamei, tmeast. The Torah says this is not pure. Why? Because when we speak about Jewish law, you have to be very clear. So there must be the arguing that it says about facts. What is the fact? Is it real or is it not real? That must be the argument. However, the rule in the Talmud is that whenever there's an argument, the way to understand an argument, especially if the argument about something physical and real, is to always find the part where it's lafushi machoikas lemafshina. That's the rule in the Talmud, which means the assumption always is that the argument is in the least denominator, in the smallest denominator. So, in short, let's not tell you a story before I tell you the conclusion. I just spoke before I came here. On the way here, I wanted to make sure I knew the story correctly. I called Rabbi Moshe Feller, Ein Gesund. He's Rebbe's emissary to Minnesota. I think he's already in his 80s, Ein Gesund. So I asked him about a story I heard a long time ago. I'll share with you right now. There was a woman who was experiencing a dibuk. She was experiencing a soul in her or something in her that disturbed her sleep. She would scream in the middle of the night, and her husband didn't know what to do with her, and she was like really like, the family, everyone was like worried. This lady's screaming all night. Maybe she's possessed by a spirit. So they went to Rabbi Feller, the Chabad Center in Minnesota. They don't write exorcism as one of the things that Chabad centers do. It's not advertised. But in Minnesota, besides Rabbi Feller, there's also Rabbi Manis Friedman, who's he's a world-renowned speaker and teacher. So he's the local mystic, if you will. So they asked Rabbi Friedman to speak to her. Rabbi Friedman's like, I don't know what to do. Let's call the Rebbe. So they called the Rebbe. The Rebbe answered 3 words. The Rebbe said, be careful, kasher tachil v'shtia, she should be careful to eat kosher food and drink, and I'll mention prayer at the gravesite of my father-in-law. Kosher food and drink, I'll mention her in prayer. So she started keeping, they taught her, this is OU, this is okay, know how to recognize kosher things, and she started keeping kosher, and all everything stopped. Everything stopped. Problem was, it wasn't so easy to keep kosher in Minnesota in those days. Now I'm sure it's much easier, but those days it was much harder. So they slipped. They stopped being so careful in kosher. So they didn't want to go back to the Chabad rabbi because he's going to say, well, the Rebbe told you to keep kosher. So what did they go to? They went to some crystal ballish lady. So they go to this crystal ball lady, whatever a psychic, I don't know exactly what she did. But she says to the lady when she comes to her, she says, I see that you are connected to a very, very great soul, a soul who has come here not for himself, that the things of this world he doesn't need anything that the world has to offer, he's just here to help others. And this very great soul you've connected with, why are you talking to me? So they said, well, and she describes what she sees, she describes the Rebbe, that's what she described to them. And so they're like, well, it wasn't so easy. He told us to keep kosher. So what's the big deal? So they said, well, kosher wasn't such a problem. The problem was the Chalav Yisrael. Chalav Yisrael, the milk should be Chalav Yisrael. The milk got sour. So the psychic says, get a freezer. Get a freezer and get Chalav Yisrael. That was the psychic's advice. And they took the advice that's when you need psychics, So that psychics do have vision, I guess, You see it from the story. She knew get a freezer. So they got the freezer. She started keeping not just kosher, but keeping Chalav Yisrael. And thank God she was cured. So getting back to our subject over here. So the rule of thumb is that which means to understand an argument in halacha, you always assume that the argument is only predicated on the smallest variable, and therefore the argument between Maimonides and the other opinions is only about the time the Torah was given. The time the Torah was given, there was a power of witchcraft, and that was according to the other opinions, not Maimonides. Maimonides said there was never a power of witchcraft, and the other opinions maintain that there was. Their argument was only at that time. However, and that argument was a very all-encompassing argument because they argue about reality. They argue about what is this thing, that was said to be brought to the world by witchcraft. What is it? I want to point out the big thing. How did this subject come up? Where did this come from? This information I'm sharing with you, where did this come from? The reason that this was introduced was because the Rebbe said that we should use the radio to spread Torah. And he says the reason why God made the radio was in order we should use it. And people were telling the Rebbe, how can you use the radio? The radio comes from the opposite of holiness. So the Rebbe says, anything that God created is for a purpose. God, the opposite of holiness, witchcraft, all those things, have no power to create anything. They can't create anything. As it says in the Talmud, they can't even create a wing of a flea, wing of a mosquito. So they can't create anything. It says in Tanya, just like God, so to speak, has no source, the reason why we feel that we are created and we don't feel like we have a source is because we come from God Himself who has no source. So in order to create anything, only God can create anything. Nothing can be created without God. So these people were saying, well, the unholy people created this force of the radio. It says the force of the radio is an incredible force that existed far before anything, and this was something that God created with the ability to reach one end of the world to the other instantaneously. So certainly that force was created for the purpose of serving God. And you cannot say that it was created by witchcraft, because witchcraft can't create anything in the first place. And even if witchcraft had any power at all at one time, according to all opinions now, Maimonides and the other opinions, there is no power at all to any of this stuff nowadays, for sure. And therefore, it's a waste of time and a waste of money to engage in anyone's roll of dice. If you really want to tell them to roll dice for you, I'll be happy to. You can pay me. I'll give you a discount. Whatever they're charging, I'll charge you half. I'll roll the dice for you. But don't just a waste of time. The horoscope and the astrology and all these things, it's a waste of time. It's not real. It's fake. If there was a time that this had a meaning, it doesn't now. And even according to the Rambam, it never had. But the bottom line is that everything Hashem does give us in this world, that we've created in our lives, we're meant to know Hashem wherever we are and with whatever we have. That time for another story or not really? One story? It's a 2-minute story or no?
Tomorrow. You have to go tomorrow.
90 seconds. 90 seconds on the clock. 90 seconds. So, son, if I share with you, on the night of Shir Shal Pesach, unfortunately, we had when it was raining, our synagogue didn't just have rain, it had 4 faucets of, like, bathtub faucets coming down in the synagogue. It was crazy. Because there was a pipe, I don't know exactly how it happened, but it was crazy. So make long story short, somebody called someone else from Pakistan, who called someone else who came to the door wearing a shirt that said 770 restoration. 770, is the Rebbe's synagogue. So I was like, wow, this is amazing. On the Chag. But that was what I was thinking. It's on the Chag. The guy himself wasn't Jewish, but this company has to be set up, so it should be able to be working according to Torah. There's a way that a company could be set up that it could work that the non-Jews could work on Shabbat. There's a way to set it up. So I contacted this guy, and he was an amazing, nice guy. And actually, I'm going to go to him right now. I'm going to set up his company so it should be kosher for Shabbat. So it's an important thing to know that it's possible for your business to be open, you not to lose anything, and according to halacha. But whatever Hashem puts in the world, why did this guy come in the middle of the holiday? It must be that I have to help him for Shabbat, right? That must be the reason. Everything happens for a reason. Eibusha should help us. We should see the emes and the chama, the true comfort, Achman al-Tzlan, of all the things that happen today in Eretz Yisrael. B'yis Mashiach right now. L'chaim.